Welcome again, everyone, to today's session of day 3 of the Bootcamp. A key part of our IWD 2026 Global Techathon campaign. I'm Shivangi Mehra, and I'll be your host today as we continue this exciting week of hands-on learning and skill building. And as we mark International Women's Day this month, Bootcamp Week reflects our commitment to advancing inclusion in AI. We are proud to create space for young people, particularly girls, to strengthen their technical skills and step confidently into leadership within emerging technologies. But first, I would like to say a big thank you to those who joined us yesterday and are back again today. You are the real MVPs. And again, I would like to repeat myself as you're joining. Please use your first names and let's remain respectful and mindful over the chats. Also, before we dive in, here's a little teaser. There's a very exciting opportunity that we'll be sharing at the end of today's session. You'll definitely want to stay tuned and logged in to find out what it is. It is something you won't want to miss, actually. So today we have a very special speaker, Sofia Dey Choudhury, who at just the age of 14 is already an academic scholar, a co-founder of a math app, Mathletico, for 11 to 15 years old. She's a three-time UK Math Olympiad medalist, winner of an Oxford University Computational Challenge, and over all of this, a guitarist. Wow, she'll be sharing her expertise on prototyping with Figma and will walk you through on how to turn ideas into visual prototypes, which is a critical step in bringing your AI solutions to life. So drop your questions during the session in the Q&A box and we'll take it towards the end. So, over to you, Sophia.
Hi everyone, my name's Sophia. Today I'm going to be presenting about prototyping with Figma. So I'll just share my screen. Okay, so prototyping with Figma. Figma is, if anyone doesn't know, Figma is a very important prototyping tool which helps people design apps and websites and anything you want to see before you deploy it. So say you have an app that you're thinking of, but you don't know how to code it, or maybe you already have the idea, but you want to see how it would look outputted onto a screen. So that's where prototyping comes in. So a bit about me before we start. It's already been said, but I'm 14. I'm a certified associate programmer in Python, from Python Institute. I'm professionally certified in HTML, CSS, Java, and Django, and I've applied all of these in different projects of mine. I came first nationally in the OUCC, and I have 4 national medals in Maths Olympiads. But I think the main focus of what we're going to be talking about today is I'm also the co-founder of Mathletico, which is a maths app, again, as was mentioned before, a maths app for anyone really, like any age range, young people, adults. And it won me the Atherton Award, which is an award for female entrepreneurs around the UK. So what is Mathletico? Mathletico, as I said, for adults and children, it has 170 plus math skills with different levels so that for any age range. It currently has 100K plus downloads and it teaches practical maths and curriculum maths. So practical maths is stuff that you would use in daily life, like meal deals and taxes, and there are many more options. As I said above, 170 plus skills, so you can learn loads of things there. And I think what I want to touch upon today is how I came about making Mathletico. So, first, when we came up with the idea, and this is the process for most apps and websites and companies. We had an idea for the app. We thought, okay, we're going to teach people maths, practical maths, but all we had was one snippet of code. So how do we make that code into something more, something that you can see on the screen? Because obviously when coding with Python or any other language, all you can see is something printed out into the console. But that's obviously you can't give that to a user. They need to see it in an app or a website that they can type in somewhere. So that's where Figma comes in. It's not just Figma, there's other tools as well. But yeah, so here's why prototyping exists. So there are different tools for it, like Figma, Thunkable, and many other tools. But prototyping is really important for bringing your idea to life. So here we can see that when people build apps, they usually start by coding. But the problem is you usually don't know yet if the product will actually make sense to users. Because in your head, it might all make sense, but when you actually try to make it, you realize, oh, that button doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense if it goes there, etc. So it helps you test the idea before building the real thing. And the diagram at the bottom of the screen, I think, is a good example of this. So you can see three different screens at the bottom, and it shows how if you're left-handed, right-handed, or maybe ambidextrous, then how you would find each of these. So for a left-handed person, these are the positions that would come most naturally. And for a right-handed person, you'd be using your thumb from the right side. So these are all really important things to consider when you're prototyping, and we'll come into these more later. So what is a prototype? A prototype is a clickable version of a product, and it doesn't need backend or real data. And it's really good for showing yourself, your employees, your friends and family. It shows them how the app's going to look as a final product. But the main cause is so that people can move between screens and experience the flow of the app. So as you can see at the bottom of the screen here, this is actually some screens from our app, Mathletico. So you can see the arrows. I don't know if I can use the pointer here. Yeah, I can. So here you can see that there's a button called Leave a Comment, and there's an arrow here that leads to this screen. So this tells the user, or like the person who's designing this, that you can connect this arrow to here, and then if you do that, then when you press Leave a Comment, it will take you to this screen. And if you press Submit, it will take you to this screen, and then when you press back here, it will take you back to the previous screen. So these are all really important for you to understand, for you, whoever you're pitching to understand the flow of this app. So next slide. Okay, so now let's start with the whole flow of prototyping, from starting with the user goal all the way until deploying the final product. So every product starts with a simple question. What is the user trying to do? So in this session, we're going to end up hopefully with a functional app, obviously not an actual app that you can deploy to the App Store or Play Store, but it's going to be on Figma and you'll be able to show family and friends with your own goals. So here we're trying to decide what the user is going to do. So in this session, our example is going to be to build an app to prevent food waste. So this is, I think we can all say, a very prevalent issue when we're buying cheese or milk or anything. There's always the problem of when does this expire? And there's so many things in the fridge. Sometimes things expire, we don't realize, and that can be a health hazard. So here in this app, we want to solve that. We want to make sure the user can add and manage food items. And everything in the app should always support that goal. Any app that you see will always be working towards a goal, and it's very important to not get distracted. Obviously, you can have multiple things, but you always need to be able to phrase it into one singular goal. For example, if we look at Duolingo, they're a language learning app, so that will be their aim. Obviously, now they're expanding into chess and maths, so now I think they'll market themselves more as a general learning app with different parts. And sometimes, if you have too many goals for one app, you decide to split it into different apps, like what Duolingo did with their app, or with Mathletico, my app. The goal is to teach functional skills, and we try not to digress too much from that. So everything in the app should support one singular goal. And in this app that we're going to make today, the goal is to add and manage food items. Okay. Step two, map the flow. So before designing screens, it always helps to write out the steps. So in our app, if we think about it, the user is going to see the icon, they're going to open the app, and they should be able to add an item. So say they look into their fridge, they've just finished all their grocery shopping, and they're thinking, yeah, okay, now we need to add this item. This item is going to expire, say, in a month or a week. So that will be the choose best before end date in the flowchart. And then you'll be able to see it in the list. So hopefully after you enter it, there's going to be a list of items, and then you'll be able to save this. So that should be the core flow of the product. And again, it completely depends on what you're going to be making. If it's Duolingo or Quizlet or any app like that, they all have a very similar flow to each other. So you might, if it's Duolingo, you open the app, you see a home screen. In that home screen, you can go to different lessons, but it usually points to you what they want you to do. They'll be pointing at a specific button. So it will always indicate to you what you want to see and what they want you to do. So that is the whole point of an app because you don't want the user to enter the app and then be confused on what we're going to do. So there should always be a goal to when you're joining the app. And the diagram on the right is just an example. So if you're buying milk or something. Okay, step three, design the screens. So once you understand the flow, you can design the screens that support it. So at first, these are usually very simple. They're just layout and structure, where buttons go, where information appears. So as you can see on the screen at the bottom, this is going to be not the end result of what we're doing today, but part of the process. So as you can see on the screen, it's literally just rectangles and text, and then a gray rectangle and more text. And I think the most complex thing on this screen is the triangle in category because it's a drop down. Um, so designing the screens is obviously the first step to actual prototyping that you can see. So it's very important not to get too into the structure. You don't want to be thinking, I have an idea for the color palette, I have an idea for this. If you get those ideas, write them down somewhere else. But at the very first at the start of your process, you should always be thinking of the very basic design of the screen, which is why it's called a wireframe sometimes, or just a prototype. So a wireframe just means that there's not much on the screen. It's just a very basic outline of everything that you're thinking of. Step four is turning it into a prototype. So this means you have an idea, you've done all the designing, and now you want to connect the screens together. So that's what I showed earlier. So if we see here, this is the prototyping process. So you have a button here, you use an arrow to point to another screen, you use this button, add to another screen, here to here, another screen. So that is the definition of prototyping here. So buttons lead to other screens and actions change what the user sees. So say if they press the back button, then that will change what they see. And this design then becomes interactive. And interactive means that the user can interact with it and they have actionable things to do. So, for example, in Duolingo or any other app like that, you can go into a lesson and you can do questions on that lesson. And it's not just telling you things to do. So if it's an app, maybe, that has video lessons, that is less interactive because you're just looking at videos. And obviously, that is still a good app, but that's not a very interactive app. So you go into the app and you just watch videos and you come out. And there's not much for the user to do. And therefore, there's not much prototyping that a designer has to do. But an interactive screen, there will be a user trying to use the app, pressing buttons, and then that design is then interactive. And then step five, testing the idea. So now someone can actually try the product. So if you hand it to, say, family or friends, you can always give them the phone and tell them, hey, I made this app. I've been working on this for the past few weeks, and it would be great if you could please give me some feedback on this. So and then you can give them a task and see if they can complete it. So in this testing process, it's always important to remember that they don't know what your app is, and you shouldn't tell them beforehand what the app is about. Because when a user sees an app on the App Store, it's likely that they're not going to be researching much about it before downloading it. They're going to download it, they're going to want to explore everything, they're going to look around, and you want them to be able to figure out first time what the app is about. Say they enter Google. When you go on Google, it's very obvious what you have to do. There's a search bar that says maybe enter your question or something like that, and it's very obvious to the user what you have to do. It's all concentrated into one tiny place, and it's not confusing for the user. So you always want to make sure the user can tell what you're trying to say or do. And if your family or friends tell you that they're confused or stuck, or if they ask you, oh, what does this button do? You have to make sure that you have to fix that because you have to always assume that the user knows nothing. That's that's brutal, but it's true. You have to pretend that the user doesn't know anything about the app, and you always have to make it as easy as possible for the user. Now, I think now that we've gone through all the prototyping and what it is and definitions, I think it's time for us to explore on Figma itself how to make an account, how to make these screens, and how to link them together. So I'm now going to move to the Figma app. So, if you haven't used Figma before, you might want to download it now or sign up. So, I might just give a bit of time for that, if that's okay. So you have to, if I go back on the website, so you have to go to figma.com and enter, and then you press get started for free. You can enter your email and just make sure to get started there because this is going to be a crucial part of today's session. And I would highly recommend having a Figma account so that you can continue designing and copy what I'm doing on the screen. So if it's okay, I'll just wait here for a bit until if it would be great if we could have like some thumbs up to see if people know how to do the login process. So hopefully people are managing to do that. Yeah, I think I'll get started soon if everyone's ready. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll just start showing these screens then. Okay. Okay, I think people are okay. So first of all, you have to go to the home page and you'll see a bunch of different options here. And we want to make a new design. So you can press this button and there are always different things you can do in Figma. Oh, and also remember, if you're a student, you can actually get a free account. You can access all the professional features because Figma by itself is a completely free app or website. But if you want to access some of the more premium features like unlimited files, you can get a free account by being a student and entering your school name. So if you want, you can always do that. So if we press the plus design button here, this should open up a new design for us. So I already have a file where we're going to be doing this, and I've given it the name Food Saver because that's what our product will be called today. So if we think about what our flow was earlier, so if we go back to the slides, back to the slides. Our flow was we want someone to open the app, add an item, and choose a best before end date. So let's start with what happens when a user will open the app. So we want to make a new frame. So to make a new frame, we have to go to prototype and then we choose a device. So, depending on which device you use, it could be an iPhone 17, iPhone 15, or Android. And Figma is really good for this because you can actually choose whatever device you want, and they should have that. They have Apple Watch, MacBook Air. I think this is more for desktop apps or websites. If you want to have a TV, maybe if you're designing apps for TV, like YouTube TV, and you have loads of options here. So I think I'm going to start with iPhone 17. And what you can do here, you can press the letter F. And oh yeah, so you also have the options here. So if you press the letter F, which is a shortcut for a frame, then you can choose the device. And you should see here, it comes up with a frame. And this frame should be called iPhone 17 1 or whichever device you've chosen. And on the right here, we can see the different colors. So when you run this, you can actually choose different colors for the phone. I'm not sure if you can see it here, but there are different colors for the phone. So let's just stick with lavender. And it can be portrait or landscape, whichever you want. But let's just start with portrait because that's how apps are usually designed, unless they're a landscape video game. So let's make a wireframe for our very first screen. So if we press T, or design, yeah, let's press T. T is the shortcut for text. So you also have a nice toolbar down here, which gives you different options for what you want to do. So for example, if we press that, that's the rectangle, so you can make a rectangle out of that, and we'll be exploring that later. But for now, we want to make text. So we press that, or you could just press T. And here on the first page, we wanted to say the name of the app because they've just entered and this is going to be what we call a splash screen. So food saver. And we can choose what font size this is going to be. So we can make this maybe 32 or as big as we want. So that can also be 48. I say the recommended size for normal text on an app is 16 pixels, but obviously this is the first page, it's a splash screen, and you can put however big you want it to be. And some nice inspiration to get will be from Pinterest, Facebook, LinkedIn maybe, because they all have very nice logo splash screens. So we put this in the center, and if you want to center align it, say it's over there, then you can go to this alignment section, and that gives you the option to put it wherever you want. So you can put it left, center, or right. So we want to put it in the center for now. And obviously they're going to see this splash screen, and they probably want to do something. So this can be our first screen. And then if you want to duplicate a screen, so say you don't want to lose everything you just did. So say you've just made a bunch of shapes, like like that maybe, and if you press frame and make another screen, then you don't have the items. But say you just want to move some stuff around. So you can go here, right click. So I right click from here, and then you can press copy or you can duplicate. So to duplicate, you have to do Command or Control D. So depending on what OS you're on. If you're using Windows, Control D. If you're using MacBook, Command D. So I'm using MacBook, so I'm going to do Command D, and it duplicated the screen. So, and you can see how far away things are using margins. So this is a bit more advanced, I think, but if you want to see the margin between two parts of the screen, then you can put Option or Alt on Windows, and then it will show you how far away they are. So say we want them to be around 48 pixels away from each other. So that's what we do. Now let's delete each of these squares. So I'm just using backspace. And now say this is the splash screen, and we want them to then see a get started button so that they know what to press. So now to make our button, we want to use a rectangle. So we go down here, we press the rectangle button, and we just drag our cursor across to how big we want our rectangle to be. So we do that, and this red line that you see here, so hopefully you can see a red line with some crosses on it. This red line shows you whether or not the item is centered in the screen. So we can put it around there, and again we press Option or Alt, and we can see the distance between the text and the button. So usually the distance you want is 48, 36. I think once you start designing more, you might figure out the ideal numbers for this stuff. So 60 pixels, 48 pixels, they're all the numbers that mathematically look correct. So 72, 84, those kinds of numbers. So we have this button and we want to say, let's make it 60 pixels away. So another cool feature of Figma is you don't have to always drag it around because by dragging around you might lose the accuracy of your proportions. So here you have 44, we want to make it 48, I move it down, it becomes 70, so that's not ideal. So you can use the up and down buttons on Figma. So currently I'm pressing the up button and it's taking me up. And if this is too slow, say I want to go to 24 fast, then that took a long time. So you can also press Shift up or down. So Shift up or down takes you 10 plus or 10 minus. So say you're at 24 and you want to get to 54 fast, you press Shift down and press it 3 times. Shift down, 1, 2, 3, and then that's 54 pixels away. So that I'd say that's a very useful feature of Figma. And you can also change this. You can go to preferences and you can change a lot of things. But for now, let's not focus on that. So we were making a text that says get started. So we already have our button and we wanted to say get started. So we make another text and let's call it get started. Now notice how this text is automatically big, but before we had to increase the size. So the next text you make after the one you just made will take the size of the one you just made. So because Food Saver font size is 48, here our font is also 48, but we don't want it to be that big because a button isn't meant to have very big text. So let's make that 24 maybe, so half the size. And we put that in the center, we wait for it to snap into the red lines, and maybe we make that button a bit smaller. Now, another cool feature of Figma is that you can select the text, and then to also select the rectangle, you can press Shift. Now, by doing that, you'll notice that on the left side, two layers have been selected, Get Started and Rectangle 1. So we selected both of those, and now if we move them around, they move together instead of having to move them around separately. That's a very cool feature. Another thing is you can group them together. Grouping them together means you don't have to select them separately. They're in a group. You can open this group to see the items in that group. Yeah, okay. So now we have our get started text, but we're not sure if it's in the center. So we can select both of them and then we press this. So wait, let me put that there to demonstrate this. So we want to center them. So we press this button and you'll notice that the text automatically aligned itself into the button. And then we press this, which is align vertical centers, and then it aligns itself vertically. So now we're sure that this is in the center. Great. So now we have our first two screens of our wireframe. Now let's think about what we were trying to do in our app. So open the app. We finished that part. Now we have to add an item. So let's go to the adding an item screen. So instead of duplicating, let's just press F again and press iPhone 17. So 70, let's change the margins to 48 because here we had 48, so let's change this to 48. Um, 1 second. Okay, so now that our margins are 48, we can make different buttons to show the flow for this. So add an item. So let's have three different buttons. Let's think about what we want to have in this screen. So to brainstorm, we can just make a separate text on the side. I just press T and you can make bullet points. So I just did dash space and that gives you bullet points. So thinking of features we want on this screen, we want them to be able to have a fridge, maybe, to be able to see everything they have in their fridge, or at least the stuff they've put in their app. So my fridge. Then obviously the main part, add item. And then we can have another section called reminders. So this can remind the user of what food is going to be expiring soon. And then we can have different items as well, but for now, let's just have these three items. So I'm just going to make this a tiny bit smaller so that we can see it. So let's have three buttons. So obviously we've made a nice button here, and we might not want to make that button all over again. So let's select these two. So you can just drag this across and select these two, right click, and then press copy or Command C, as you would use on other applications. So you select the frame, and you can see it's selected because of the blue outline, and you press paste or Command or Control V. Now we have a button on this screen, but we want three buttons. So we can use the Command D or Control D, which is the duplicate option, and this lets us duplicate this. So as you can see, this has been duplicated. There's now rectangle 1, rectangle 2, and get started, get started. We're going to change this text in a bit. Let's make the margins for this 24. Right now the margins don't really matter, but I'm just doing these to show how to add margins. So let's have our three buttons. Oh, oh yeah, and another thing we might want to do here, which we didn't do here, we want to center align this text because right now if we change this text and get started and we want exclamation marks, then it just adds it to the right, but that looks wrong. So we want to center align it, then we add exclamation marks and it's being center aligned by itself. And there are cool features called auto layout as well in Figma, but I don't think we're going to be getting into those this session. So let's select these three texts using the Shift key. And now we can press alignment, center, and now when we type things, it will stay in the center. So let's add my fridge, add item, and reminders. Perfect. Now we have these, and I think it would also be cool to have a little option in the bottom that warns you if you have any expired food already. So to do this, we can have a warning icon and then it could say 3 items expiring soon. So let's have this copy paste or duplicate, and we can say 3 items expiring soon. Again, notice how that went center aligned because I previously made everything else center aligned, so it's going to do the same for this. So 3 items expiring soon. I might make that a bit smaller, so 18 pixels, and then we can add a triangle. The triangle is for the warning sign. So The hazard sign, that's a triangle, and then an exclamation mark. So we see the rectangle down here, because so far the only shape we have is a rectangle. So now we want to add a triangle. We press this arrow, and we have all these different options. So as you can see here, there's no triangle text, but we see there's a triangle image next to polygon. We press that, and we drag this across, and that makes us a triangle. Now, what's cool about the polygon feature is that you can choose different sides for your polygon. So this is an input that usually isn't there, but for the polygon feature there is. So you can choose the count. So you can use the up or down arrow to choose, or you can just type in the number. So say you want to have a dodecagon with 12 sides, you write 12, and then it gives you 12-sided polygon. If we zoom in, we can see that. So we have the triangle we wanted. We can add a text with an exclamation mark and just put it in there. And now we have a kind of this is starting to resemble an app, I think. So obviously it looks quite ugly, but we're going to refine this later on. So now we have our second part of the flow, which is adding an item. Now we want the screen that says choose a best before date. But I think it's good to go in a flow. I think we should go through each of these so that we can start prototyping and adding arrows. So let's make the screen for my fridge. And actually, a good practice we should have here is to have them all lined up off one after the other. So 48, and then here. The nice thing here is it's because Figma recognizes that these two are next to each other and that they have 48 pixels between them, it will also choose for this to have 48 pixels between it as well. So we have, let's rename these actually. So this can be the splash screen. This can be, oh yeah, and these top text, these represent the names of the screens. So you can double click that. So I'm double clicking this, and then you can type in whatever name you want and press enter. And then you can rename your screens. So let's change this screen because iPhone 17 isn't very descriptive. It tells you the phone that this is suitable for. But you can press my fridge. Ooh, my fridge. And then you can, so that's a nice way to organize your screens. So now under my fridge, oh, my fridge actually isn't the good option for this. Let's call this home. And let's call this the navigation. Okay. Obviously, we can rename these later, but for now, let's just call them these. So now we want to make the my fridge screen. So let's make a new frame by pressing F and then iPhone 17. Let's put it up here. Let's call it my fridge. So let's think about what we want to have in this screen. I think it should be very basic. We should just have the items that you have in your fridge right now. So let's have a rectangle. So I'm going to copy and paste this into this screen. Make them a bit bigger maybe because we want to have a few details on here. And let's add some text. I'm pressing T and then, oh, and the text is very big again, as you can see from the cursor. So we can write Apple and then 32 pixels maybe, or let's make this 24 pixels. So we have Apple in bold, and then we unbold that and we can say 3 days left. I think that's a very minimalistic way of telling the user of what's happening. So let's just make that smaller. And oh yeah, and also you can zoom in to see how many pixels you have. So I'm not sure if it's coming through on the screen, hopefully it is. But also on your Figma, you'll be able to see that when you zoom in, you can see each and every pixel. So if I just 1, 2, and it snaps automatically, you can see that now we have 30 pixels up and 30 pixels down. So we have Apple 3 days left. Let's just show a few more examples. So I did Command V or Control V, and I'm going to press the up arrow until the margin is 24. And I'm going to make this item banana maybe. Now, these are inaccurate because I don't think when they sell apples and bananas, they say when they expire. But I'm going to put these here. Copy, paste. Then you have milk, maybe. Milk is a good example here. Um, and I'd say for the purpose of this, I'm also going to have an option where it says expired yesterday. And then for this is going to make it look a bit ugly, but you can press the fill button here. So there's a fill button, there's 4 dots, but we're not going to talk about those. Just press this and it's going to give you a lot of options for colors, all the options on the spectrum. And you can it's already going to be selected on red. So you just go here maybe and then the milk looks red so that it can warn the user saying, please throw away your milk. This is not, you can't have this. So, and another thing I think we should have here is icons to categorize these. So say for an apple, you would have a picture of an apple. For a banana, you have a picture, or maybe you can categorize them as fruit and dairy, etc. So you can have an apple here maybe, just as icons, and then a picture of milk here. So another feature that I'd like to show is if you go to the top, you go to the icon, it should be something similar on your screen as well. You can go to plugins. Now you can see that I have a lot of plugins here, but you can go on plugins and then go to manage plugins. Now going to manage plugins, it will give you a lot of plugins to choose from. So plugins are just applications that you can use within Figma, which gives you a lot of options of what you can do other than just designing screens. For example, you can have icons, you can have a light to dark theme automator so that you don't have to make dark screens. You can have animations, you can have illustrations, HTML to design. So if you have a HTML code, it will automatically make that into Figma. And there's a lot of things you can do. You can also animate using that. But for today, because we're talking about icons, we're going to want to install an icon plugin. So I would recommend searching up Iconify. I already have Iconify, so I don't need to install this. But just to show you how that would work, you can press Iconify Icons Library, and then if you press Run, then it will run the icon library automatically. So again, I would recommend not getting this one. I'd say get Iconify because it's free, and you can see here we need 15 tokens. So I'm going to go back to my plugins. So from here, plugins, and then we go to Iconify. In Iconify, we can have lots of different icons. So I think they have around 800,000 options, or yeah, something like that. So if we want to categorize them all as fruit, we can choose apple. It comes up with the Apple logo, but we just want a regular old apple. So let's choose this icon. Then after choosing this icon, we can press import, and then you'll see here we have a tiny little apple ready on the screen. So let's move that over here. And to expand this, when expanding, you might notice that it gets, not right now, but if you unselect that, then you can see that the proportions change. And you don't want that to happen when you're changing the size of something. So you can always press this icon, which means lock aspect ratio, which allows you to make it bigger or smaller while preserving the aspect ratio. So we could make this around this big maybe, and this isn't on the frame. And then we can see here that it's centered within this rectangle. Now let's copy and paste this onto the banana because obviously these are just fruits, so it doesn't matter if it's a banana or not. And then for milk, we can go back to Iconify, and for dairy, we can search up dairy maybe, and it comes up with milk, or we can just search milk, and it comes up with a bunch of milk cartons. So let's just choose a random one, that one. And we see what this was, so 59, so we just write 59 there, and we can change the size of it. Perfect. Now this is again a rather ugly screen, but we're going to make this look a lot better in a bit. Now we have our My Fridge screen. So we're going to change this in a little bit. We're going to start prototyping, but first of all, let's finish all our screens and then we can focus on that. Now let's say the user presses on Add Item. What's going to come up on the screen? So when you're adding an item, if you think about it, all the user should be able to do is add the name of the item, as you can see on these buttons. So they'll enter Apple, then they'll enter when it expires, so they can have like a little calendar thing, and they should be able to categorize them, which comes up with these images, and then a save button. So let's design that. So we can press F, iPhone 17, and the margin is 48. So now we're going to make a new rectangle, and you might be wondering why I'm not using this rectangle. Well, that's because we're making a new kind of element. We're making an input instead of a rectangle. Now, obviously, Figma can't recognize whether or not it's an input, but we can show using visual hints that this is not a button, but that it's an input. So we press R. So R is a shortcut for a rectangle. So you just press that, or you just go from the toolbar, and I'm going to drag it. So notice how this is just a gray filled in rectangle, but we don't want that. We want a white rectangle, and I know it looks like it's disappeared, but it's still here if you hover over it. hover over that, and then we press the stroke button. So the stroke button means the outline of the shape. So we can make it slightly gray, and then this gives us a filled in box. So if you think about it, a not filled in box, an outline box. And if you think about it, when you have an input, it's never filled in with gray. It's always, oh, it might be, but for our app, that wouldn't make sense because the buttons are filled in. So here the inputs are indicated by a hollow rectangle. And it's always important to be able to distinguish between elements on a screen. So being able to distinguish between a button and an input to avoid confusion. So as we discussed before, let's have three inputs. So in an input, you usually have placeholder text. So here we can have item name. And we don't want it to be so black because when the user enters it, they won't be able to see their own text. So we select both of these, copy, paste, and we paste them down here. 24, copy, paste, 24, and then expires. So they can enter a date for expiring, and then category. So again, because this is a drop down, we want this to be a drop down because it's a category and there's only so many categories that you can have. So you have dairy products, maybe you have fruit. I'm not sure if fruits have expiry dates, but let's just assume that for the purpose of this. So for the drop down, we need a triangle. So we go into the toolbar and we press polygon and we just drag a shape. And also, if you want to be able to have more control over the shape of the triangle, you can press your shift key, and the shift key makes sure that it's just one equilateral triangle instead of all sorts of funky triangles. So you have, let's make this 24 by 24, and let's right click this because this is an up button, and that doesn't make much sense because we don't have anything down here for it to go up. So we press it, right click, and then you'll see all the way down here we have two options called flip horizontal and flip vertical. So we want to flip it vertically, and flipping it vertically will make it upside down, and flipping it horizontally would have just done nothing because it's symmetrical already. So now we have a drop down. For now, we're not going to design what happens when you press it. Let's just have the drop down there. And finally, we want to have a save button. So we can just go back to one of our buttons here, copy it, paste it, put it down there. Um, Fix the margins. Oh, we just write save there. Let's write that in capital, please. And now we have our next screen. So this can be our add item screen. Perfect. And now we want to have an item details page, maybe. So to be able to see when you go to fridge, when you press apple, what will you see? You want to know information about the apple, not just the fact that you have 3 days left, maybe. So copy. Oh, another detail. You can press the frame, press copy, paste. If you don't want to keep pressing F and then pressing the iPhone 17, you can just delete all these. So now you have an empty page. But just keep in mind that it's still called My Fridge because you copied it from My Fridge. So it's going to be called My Fridge. So you might want to rename that to Item Details. This is going to be the screen for the details of the item. And always make sure to name your screens really clearly because you don't want to have vague names. So when you're showing someone, you might forget yourself what the screen was for. Okay, now we want a header, maybe. A header saying item details. And we want this to be at the center of the screen. So we go to alignment and we press center. Let's make this a bit bigger because it's a header. And then we press center again. And let's have some texture. So name, let's make this smaller again. So you can make that bold by pressing Command or Control B, and then name Apple expires. Let's say it expires on the 31st of October, and then we can say the remaining time, so that the user doesn't have to think about how much time is left. They press remaining time, and then 2 days, maybe 2 days. Perfect. So now we have the details about the item, and now we can have three different buttons, I'd say. One is edit, because you might want to edit it. You might realize, oh, I entered that wrong. The apple actually expires in 2 years, maybe. So you can change that. Then there should be a delete icon in case you decided to just chuck that item because you're allergic to it, maybe. Or you should have a used button, which I think is the most useful one. Say you have the apple and then you've already eaten it, and there's no point keeping that. So you can just mark it as used. So let's have three different buttons. So since we already have three buttons here, we just select all of them, copy them, and paste them here. So we have edit, delete, and okay, edit, delete, and used. So this can also be formatted in different ways. We can make this into a checkbox. There's different kind of checkboxes. There's check, radio, but we're not going to go into that now. But just keep in mind there's different kinds of buttons that you could do here. And then that should be everything we're thinking of right now. Because obviously this should be a fully functioning app. So realistically, if we were to finish this, it would have a screen for reminders, it would have a screen for edit, delete, used, but or maybe we'll just make the used make it go back to the previous screen. But now I'd like to show how the actual prototyping part of this works because we've made all the screens. Well, not all the screens, but as many screens as we're going to make today. So now we have to start prototyping them by joining them up with arrows. So we press prototype. So on the right side of the screen, you should see that there are two options, design and prototype. So right now we're in design, which means we're making the screens, making shapes, etc. We press prototype, and then we can select the frame. So you can't select the frame by hovering over the phone screen itself, but you can go to the text and it selects. And then since we're on prototype, if you hover to the side, so not on this, or actually on this as well, you'll see that a dot appears. So like at the top of the screen right now, if you go here to the right of the screen. So you want to go on that dot and it turns into a plus, and then you want to just drag it to wherever you're taking it. So it automatically detects, so if that's an arrow right now, you can point it to there, and then you can automatically make it go to navigation. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can go with this right now on tap. So let's say we can do an after delay here, which means it's going to automatically go to that screen. So this is quite advanced. So you might just want to copy this instead of understanding it fully. After delay 200 seconds, an animation can be smart animate, which means Figma decides for itself how it's going to move. So this should look quite cool. So if we want to see how this looks, we can press the play button. The play button should take you to a new screen, a black screen. Um, and it's loading. And hopefully you caught that, but if not, we can press R, which restarts it. So first we have the normal screen, and then it expands into a big screen with Food Saver and then Get Started. So that's quite cool for the first splash screen. And then you can press the button. If you press the button, you'll see there's another circle here. So Get Started takes you to this screen. And if we just join these up really quickly, My Fridge takes you here. Add Item takes you there. And then if we press save here, save will take you back to, let's see, save should take you back to this screen. And then item details, we haven't done any of these yet. But let's say after you've said that it's used, you'll be able to go back to your fridge. So you can see everything that's in your fridge. And by doing this, we've now fully prototyped this entire screen. Except, okay, maybe we should. Oh yeah, and from Apple, we can go into item details by just pressing the apple. Okay, so now every single screen, we have a way to go to another screen so that we're not just stuck on that screen. So now, if we go to Food Saver Draft, we can press Get Started. Okay, Get Started took us to this screen. Now, say we want to go to the fridge, My Fridge. Now we have these options. So let's press Apple because that's and by tapping outside the screen, so if you're confused on where you're allowed to press, you just press outside the screen and it will highlight in blue what you can press. So you go to Apple and then it shows you the item details for Apple. And then obviously we can't edit or delete. So if we try pressing on those, it just flashes this blue, which tells us that it wants us to press used. So we press used and it takes us back to this screen. And then we can make a loop here. So used, Apple, used. So if you're asking a family member or a friend to use this, that might be one flaw that they catch upon. Because once you've pressed Apple, used, there's no way of going back to the home screen. So then you'd have to think again about it and maybe decide that, oh, well, after you press use, it should actually take you to the home screen so that you always have a way of getting out. So Apple used, and then it takes you to the home screen, and then you're never stuck. So all these kinds of user feedback are really important for developing an app or designing an app as we're doing here. Now, obviously, we've gone through how to make the wireframes for an app, but currently it does not look very good. It looks kind of ugly right now. So I'll just show you really quickly how to make a much prettier app. So this is the final product. This is something that I worked on, I think a month or two ago for one of Teens and AI's TikTok challenges, and so you can check that out maybe. But so these are the screens I did for that. So if I just copy this image, copy, and I'll just take in some items so that I can copy and paste them in. So that, and maybe also this, just to see the font. So a big part of why this is ugly is because of the very basic font that we used. So if I copy and paste this, then it takes it over there, but we don't want it there. Let's put it down here. Um, so let's add a background to all of these screens. So because it's a food app, I decided to use a food background. Um, and I'm going to change the font of this. So here I use the font Instrument Serif, and on Figma you have loads of options for what you want to do. Obviously, as you can see here, I probably chose Instrument Serif because it's the one above the automatic default one. Um, we go to center and maybe we make this a bit bigger because this font is quite small. So now I can center that, or maybe making it a bit higher because that's making it look, oh, this isn't centered. So we can expand that. Yeah, that looks around right. So instead of it being that, it can look a lot better by adding a background and adding a nice font. And usually what people do when designing a screen is they add this thing. So at the top of every phone, you'll always see the status bar, which shows you the time, battery, and it's always nice to be able to see what your app will look like with actual features that you have on a phone. So if we just add that into the screen, make that a bit bigger maybe, and then now it looks like a proper app. Sometimes when you want to make it look bigger, better, you can add a corner radius, which makes it a bit more rounded. So say I add 24 corner radius, now you can see that instead of having sharp, ugly edges, you have rounded edges. Sometimes that's not the best thing for your app. Maybe you have something on the corners of the screen, which ideally you shouldn't. But if you have something on the corner of your screen, you should probably avoid having rounded edges. But for now, I think it's okay for us. Now let me copy and paste this and move Food Saver up as we have here. And we need to make a new button because this button is getting old and it's kind of ugly. So we make a new rectangle. So we go to the toolbar, press new rectangle. Let's make it white this time because it's better than gray. We can add a corner radius maybe here, center it. And because white is standing out a lot against the background, we want it to blend in. So I'm just going to show a feature that you might want to use, might want to just know how to do. So you can make the fill 50 maybe, or 75 maybe. 75, and you can go to effects, and there are loads of effects that you can do with your button, but I'm going to show layer blur. No, I'm not going to show layer blur. I'm going to do background blur. So background blur lets you blur the background behind it. So say you have a 50 opacity, you can see it has a gloss effect. So if I make it a bit more, so that's like, I think like Apple's recent update. It's a very glossy effect. You can take it across and it looks quite glossy. So let's have that kind of a button to make it look more modern. Let's have that at the center of the screen, maybe 48 pixels away. We copy and paste this text and write, get started. Ah, get started. And we change the size to 24 or 32. And center align that. Perfect. So now we have a much more aesthetic looking button, although it could be improved, but for now, let's just stick with this. And don't forget to keep renaming your screens. Now let's rename this to home. We have 3 different buttons, so let's just copy this button, take it up there, and just paste it. And you can see also if you layer the glass buttons, you can just have that glass effect. So get started. So let's change that to my fridge, add item, and reminders. And for the 3 items expiring soon, we'll just copy and paste that. Maybe put it to the right. As we can see, because of our background, that's not going to work if we put it at the bottom. So let's put that there. Let's maybe round that a tiny bit to maybe let's make that white. And we could make this look a tiny bit better, but for now we're just going to focus on functionality. So put that to the right. Perfect. Maybe that's you can also do copy properties. So by copying properties, you can just paste that. So just do Command or Control V and change the corner radius back to 2. But then it automatically copies the opacity and the glass effect that we had previously. And now let's have the next screen. So my fridge, let's delete that. And then we have 3 buttons here, so I'm just going to delete these because these aren't quite the buttons that we're going for. We want to make this button slightly larger. So let's have Apple and 3 days left. Apple, 3 days left. I wonder if we can make this bold. We can't make this bold. So we can make that italic, so let's do that. Let's make this text slightly smaller. So we highlight that, we go here, 24, and then let's left align this. So we can put this here, 30 pixels, make that 24 pixels, perfect. And then we can add our Apple icon again. And this time, if we still want this to have a gloss effect, we can go here, copy properties, and then paste it. Oh, paste it onto our apple. So that looks really ugly. So we're going to change that. Maybe we can change it to black. Perfect. So again, you can mess around with this. You might have a way to make it better. So please do that. Try out different things. And 20 days. So we have banana and milk. Oh, milk. Let's say that milk expired yesterday. And then this has 2 days left, maybe, just for demonstrating. And then the milk, let's find a better icon for the milk because it's kind of ugly. Milk, let's have that icon maybe because they're both filled in. So I think that's also another important thing to remember for the icons to all have the same kind of style. So filled in icons or anything you want, but they have to be standard. So if we copy properties and paste them onto this, oh, that didn't quite work. Oh, so I'm doing Command Option C here, or you could just do the normal options by right-clicking. So now we have this screen ready. Let's make this red to show that it's kind of urgent that they stop using it. So milk expired yesterday. Let's make that chat a bit more red. Yeah, let's make that red. And then just really quickly, I'm probably not gonna talk through these too much because I think they're fairly simple for you to just copy. Ooh. So my fridge, and then you can change the options. So this is an input. So item name expires category. Let's left align these, left align those. 24. Let's make these completely white so that we can indicate that this is an input box. Oh, that's a bit too much. Like 80 maybe. So then these are input boxes. Let's make these slightly lighter. And then gray. Let's make these a bit gray. Or let's just reduce the opacity. So 50. Perfect. And then let's just cover the last screen. Oh, no, we need the save button here. So up there. And then go down here. And then press. We can have the save button down there. Perfect. And then our last screen, copy and paste that. Oh no, let's have the buttons page. We copy the home screen. Let's just change the name of this to add item. Then item details. Item details. So we can just copy that into here. We copy the properties of this. So copy properties and paste them onto this. Let's center align that. Then edit, delete, and used. We can remove that. Perfect. Oh, no, not perfect. We haven't added the actual details. So we just copy and paste that into here, and then we can make that smaller. Perfect. So now if we go through these, you can prototype these in your own time. Obviously, you can join the arrows. So here we can see everything's just leading to one screen because I just copied this screen and pasted it multiple times so that the background would stay. But you can work through these screens. I think it's a good exercise if you check how to prototype, see if you understand where the arrow should go. And yeah, so that we finished designing our screens. Hopefully that wasn't too hard to follow along. And I think, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Sophia. Anyone who has questions, please ask. We're running a bit short on time, so we'll take a few. We do have one. Okay. Can't you add the day it was bought and how much it cost, or a button to see if you consumed it yet?
Oh yeah, so there was a button to see if we had consumed it yet. That was the used button. The day it was bought, those are all very good features. And I think if you do consider those, then I'd recommend writing them down on Figma. And yeah, you can work on that.
Also, what advice would you give to teens here who have an idea for an app or AI solution but don't know where to start?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say, hmm, always write down your ideas, whatever idea you have, like no matter how small or big, I'd say write them down. If you think you know how it's going to look, design it out on Figma or Thunkable or any other place like that. If you have a programming background, maybe try programming it a bit. Definitely get inspiration from other competitors. Say you want to make a language learning app, look at other language learning apps, take inspiration from them. And yeah, I just say yeah, just try your best to make that idea happen, I'd say, with the tools you're given.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the end of today's session. And what an insightful session. And I loved the demonstration. I'm sure everyone loved it. So, a huge thank you, Sophia, for sharing such valuable insights and experiences with us today.
Thank you
Your
so much for
guidance
having me.
on prototyping will be incredibly useful for everyone here, including me. And we are grateful to have had you with us throughout the session.
Yes, thank you so much.
So also, as we mentioned earlier, we have a very exciting offering for every single person on this call and watching live. So you now have the opportunity to access the AI Adventures All Access package with 25% off if you sign up between now and a week from today. So this package gives you limitless access to a variety of courses covering AI technology and innovation, allowing you to build more, expand your knowledge, and even earn certifications across different areas. So please use the barcode on the screen to claim your discount. You can take a screenshot or make a note of it to redeem your offer. And so, Bootcamp Week continues tomorrow with more sessions full of learning and inspiration. So stay curious, keep building, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next session.